I wish I could marry a man like you, says the beautiful Alain Queen because she wanted it. Captain Marcus Chen stood at the window of his ship, looking at the massive crystal palace floating in space. The Alain Empire's capital was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Towers of pure light stretched into the darkness, and strange music filled the air around them. Captain, are you ready? Asked his second officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. She looked nervous. This was humanity's first meeting with the Alain Empire, and everyone knew how important it was. Marcus nodded and straightened his blue diplomatic uniform. Remember the rules, everyone. Be respectful, follow their customs, and above all, do not cause any trouble. The transport ship carried Marcus and his team of 12 humans to the palace. As they landed on the crystal platform, Marcus felt his heart beating fast. The Alain Empire controlled hundreds of planets. They were thousands of years older than human civilization. One wrong move could mean war. The palace doors opened with a sound like singing crystals. Tall, shining beings walked toward them. The Alain looked like people made of living gemstones. Their skin reflected light in rainbow colors, and their eyes glowed with inner fire. Welcome, humans, said their guide in perfect English. I am Minister Velter. The Queen waits for you. As they walked through the palace halls, Marcus noticed something strange. Smaller Alain beings, who seemed to be servants, carried heavy items and worked very hard. The noble Alain ignored them completely. One young servant struggled with a large tray of crystal cups. The tray was too heavy, and the servant was shaking with effort. None of the Alain nobles even looked at him. Marcus stopped walking. Excuse me, he said to the struggling servant. Let me help you with that. The entire group stopped. Minister Velter stared at Marcus with surprise. Captain Chen, that is a service unit. You need not concern yourself. He looks like he needs help. Marcus said simply. He took one side of the heavy tray. The young servant looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. Together, they carried the tray to a side table. Thank you, whispered the servant in broken English. You are welcome. Marcus replied with a smile. Minister Velter watched this with confusion. Your behavior is unusual, Captain Chen. The throne room was enormous, crystal. Walls reached up so high that Marcus could not see the ceiling. Thousands of Alain nobles stood in perfect rows, their gem-like bodies creating a sea of colored light. At the center of the room sat the Queen. Queen Zeradil was the most beautiful being Marcus had ever seen. Her crystalline form shifted between colors like an aurora. She was tall and graceful, with a crown that looked like captured starlight. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like music. Welcome to our empire, humans, she said. We have heard much about your young species. Marcus bowed deeply. Your Majesty, it is an honor. I am Captain Marcus Chen, representing Earth and all human colonies. The Queen studied him with glowing eyes. Tell us, Captain Chen, what makes humans special? Why should the great Alain Empire care about such a small, new species? Before Marcus could answer, there was a loud crash. One of the Alain servants had dropped a ceremonial bowl. The precious crystals shattered on the floor. The servant fell to his knees. Shaking with fear, remove that defective unit, ordered a noble Alain. It has caused embarrassment before the Queen. Marcus saw the terror in the servant's eyes. Without thinking, he stepped forward. Your Majesty, it was an accident. Everyone makes mistakes. The court fell silent. No one had ever interrupted a royal judgment before. Marcus walked to the scared servant and helped him stand up. Are you hurt? He asked gently. The servant shook his head, tears in his eyes. Good, Marcus said. He turned to the Queen. Your Majesty, this servant works hard for your empire. One mistake should not define his worth. Queen Zeradil watched this scene with growing interest. You defend a stranger, Captain Chen. This gains you nothing. It gains me the knowledge that I did what was right, Marcus replied. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she waved her hand. The servant will continue his duties. There will be no punishment. The ceremony continued. The Alain presented gifts and spoke about trade agreements. Marcus tried to focus, but he kept noticing small things, servants who looked tired, guards who stood for hours without rest, young Alain who seemed afraid to speak. When the formal dinner was announced, Marcus learned that his crew would eat in a separate room. "Our facilities are designed for maximum efficiency," explained Minister Velter. "Different species, different accommodations." But Marcus noticed something else. One of his crew members, Engineer Rodriguez, had special dietary needs due to a medical condition. The separate dining area had no options for him. "Your Majesty," Marcus said to the Queen, "I am grateful for your hospitality, but I must decline the feast." The entire court gasped. No one had ever refused a royal invitation. "May I ask why?" the Queen said, her voice dangerously quiet. "My crew member cannot eat the food provided in our assigned area. If one of my people cannot enjoy your hospitality, then it would be wrong for me to do so." The Queen stared at him. "You would refuse royal food. For one person's convenience, I would refuse royal food because my crew is my family. We succeed together or not at all." The silence in the throne room was complete. Every Alain noble stared at Marcus as if he had grown a second head. They could not understand this behavior. Queen Zerdil stood up from her throne. She walked down the crystal steps until she stood directly in front of Marcus. Her beautiful face was inches from his. "Captain Chen," she said, her musical voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I have ruled this empire for 200 years. I have met warriors who could destroy planets and scientists who could create new stars. But never," she paused, and her glowing eyes seemed to look into his soul. "I wish I could marry a man like you," she said clearly, because she wanted it. The words echoed through the throne room like thunder. Every Alain noble stood frozen. In shock, Marcus felt his face turn red, but he did not look away from the Queen's intense gaze. In that moment, Captain Marcus Chen realized that this diplomatic mission had just become something much more complicated. The Queen's words created chaos in the crystal throne room. Alain nobles whispered to each other in their musical language. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. Captain Marcus Chen stood in the center of it all, not knowing what to say. "Your Majesty," said High Counselor Jekrin, stepping forward. His crystal body glowed bright red with emotion. "This is highly irregular. We must understand what has happened here." Queen Zerdil looked calm, but Marcus could see something new in her glowing eyes. "Summon the full council," she commanded. "We will study these humans. I want to know what makes them different." 3 days later, Marcus and his crew found themselves in a strange situation. The Alain had built a special observation facility just for them. It looked like a comfortable hotel, but Marcus knew they were being watched and studied. "This is weird, Captain," said Lieutenant Kim as they sat in the common room. "They're treating us like laboratory animals." "Interesting laboratory animals," added Engineer Rodriguez. "Did you see all those scientists watching us eat breakfast?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission psychologist, looked thoughtful. "They're trying to understand our behavior patterns, but I think they're asking the wrong questions." That afternoon, High Counselor Jekrin arrived with a team of Alain scientists. "Captain Chen, we wish to conduct some tests. Nothing harmful, we assure you." The first test was simple. They showed Marcus the doors. Behind one door was a room full of gold and precious gems. Behind the other door was a room where he could help an injured Alain worker. "Recover, choose," said the scientist. "Which room do you prefer?" Marcus looked at both doors. "Is the worker in pain?" "Yes, but the injury is not life-threatening. The gold, however, could make you very wealthy." Marcus walked to the second door without hesitation. "Then there's no choice at all." The Alain scientists made notes on their crystal tablets. They looked confused. The second test involved his crew. The Alain created a scenario where the humans had to choose between saving themselves or helping strangers. Every single human chose to help the strangers, even when it put them in danger. "This makes no logical sense," muttered one scientist to another. "They gain nothing from these choices." Dr. Vasquez overheard them. "That's where you're wrong," she said gently. "We gain everything that matters." The third test was the strangest. They put Marcus in a room with no windows and told him he would be trapped there for an unknown amount of time. They wanted to see how humans react to hopeless situations. Hours passed, then days. Marcus could hear his crew calling for him from somewhere far away, but he could not reach them. The Alain scientists expected him to become depressed or angry. Instead, Marcus started singing. He sang old Earth songs that his grandmother had taught him. He told stories to the empty room about humanity's greatest adventures. He even started exercising and planning how he would redesign the room to make it more comfortable. On the third day, High Counselor Jekrin came to see him personally. Captain Chen, our calculations show that your situation is hopeless. You have no chance of escape. Why do you remain cheerful? Marcus looked up from where he was doing push-ups, because giving up won't change anything. But staying positive might help me think of a solution. But there is no solution. We designed this test to be impossible. Marcus smiled. You know, counselor, humans have a saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. We've faced impossible situations before. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the journey to the stars. We're still here because we never stop believing things can get better. The counselor stared at him. This is illogical. Hope without evidence is a waste of energy, maybe. Marcus said, still smiling. But it's also what makes us human. That night, an emergency alarm rang through the palace. Marcus and his crew were quickly brought to the main control center. The Queen was there, along with all the high-ranking Alain officials. There's been an accident. The Queen announced, one of our mining operations on the third moon has collapsed. 57 workers are trapped underground. Marcus could see the tragedy displayed on crystal screens. The mine had caved in completely. The workers were stuck deep beneath tons of rock and metal. What are your rescue plans? Marcus asked out. High Counselor Jekrin looked at him sadly. Captain Chen, we have run all calculations. The probability of successful rescue is 0.003%. It would be more efficient to honor their sacrifice and build a memorial. You're going to leave them to die? Lieutenant Kim asked, shocked. It is not logical to risk more lives for such a small chance of success, explained another Alain official. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. Those aren't numbers on a screen. Those are living beings with families who love them, Captain. The Queen said quietly, what would humans do? Marcus looked at his crew. He saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. We would try anyway, even knowing you would probably fail, especially then. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well, you have our permission to attempt a rescue, but we cannot spare any Alain personnel for this mission. We don't need them, Marcus said firmly. My crew is enough. 2 hours later, Marcus and his team were on a shuttle, heading to the collapsed mine. The Alain had given them basic mining equipment, but everyone knew it wasn't enough for such a massive cave-in. Captain, said Engineer Rodriguez as they approached the moon, the Alain computers are right. This is probably impossible. Marcus checked his equipment one more time. Rodriguez, remember what we learned in training. Sometimes impossible just means nobody has tried hard enough yet. As their shuttle landed near the disaster site, Marcus could see the scope of the problem. The entire mine entrance was buried under a mountain of debris. It would take days just to clear a path, and they didn't know if the trapped workers had that much time. But Marcus also saw something the Alain computers had missed, a small thermal vent, about 200 meters from the main collapse. It was narrow, dangerous, and definitely not designed for human access. It was also their only chance. All right, team, Marcus said as they prepared their equipment. Let's show them what humans can do when the odds are impossible. Back at the palace, Queen Zerdil watched the human rescue mission on her screens. For the first time in 100 years, she found herself doing something completely illogical. She was hoping they would succeed. The thermal vent was barely wide enough for a human body. Captain Marcus Chen squeezed through the narrow opening, his breathing equipment scraping against the rocky walls. Behind him, his crew followed in single file, carrying rescue supplies. In hope, Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communicator. I'm reading life signs about 50 meters below us. But the passage gets even narrower. Marcus felt the walls pressing in around him. Any normal person would panic in such a tight space. Then we get narrower too, he replied calmly. For 6 hours, the human rescue team crawled through passages that the Alain computers had dismissed as impossible to navigate. They squeezed through gaps barely 30 centimeters wide. They rappelled down vertical shafts using improvised rope systems. When their equipment broke, they fixed it with spare parts and determination. Finally, Marcus heard voices echoing from below, Alain voices, weak but alive. The trapped miners could not believe their eyes when humans emerged from a crack in the wall. That seemed too small for any living creature. The workers were injured, scared, and had given up hope of rescue. We are here to take you home, Marcus told them in broken Alain language. Getting the miners out was even harder than getting in. Some were too injured to climb, others were too weak to move quickly. The humans shared their food, their water, and their strength. Lieutenant Kim gave up her own oxygen supply to help an elderly Alain miner breathe easier. One by one, all 57 trapped workers were brought to safety. Through the impossible route, the rescue took 14 hours. Marcus was the last person to emerge from the thermal vent, carrying a young Alain who had broken his leg. When they reached the surface, news crews from across the Empire were waiting. The story of the impossible rescue had spread through Alain space like wildfire. High Counselor Jekyll stood at the mine entrance, his crystal body flickering with amazement. Captain Chen, our best computers calculated this rescue as impossible. How did you succeed? Marcus, covered in dirt and exhausted, smiled weakly. We didn't try to calculate success, Counselor. We just tried to save lives. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the Queen's private chambers. The room was beautiful, with walls that showed images of distant stars and floors that felt like walking on clouds. But Marcus felt uncomfortable. This meeting was not about diplomacy, Captain Chen, Queen Zerthil said, her crystalline form shifting between blue and silver. What you did at the mine has changed something in our empire. Young Alain are asking questions they never asked before. What kind of questions, Your Majesty? They ask why we calculated the value of 57 lives as acceptable losses. They ask why efficiency matters more than compassion. They ask, she paused, her glowing eyes meeting his. They ask if there might be a better way to live. Marcus nodded slowly. Change is never easy, Your Majesty, but sometimes it's necessary. The Queen moved closer to him. You do not understand, Captain. My words in the throne room were not spoken lightly. In Alain culture, when a ruler expresses such feelings publicly, there are ancient traditions that must be followed. What traditions? The courtship trials. I must prove my worthiness to join with you through 3 sacred tests, only if I succeed. Can our union be considered? Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Your Majesty, This is moving very fast. I'm honored. But, Captain, the Queen interrupted gently. This is not just about personal feelings. Our civilizations need each other. The Alain have grown to logical, to cold. We are dying slowly, not of disease, but of the absence of growth. You humans have something we have lost, and what is that? The ability to care more about others than yourselves. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his crew, about Earth, about the political implications of this situation. If I agree to this, what happens to the diplomatic mission? It becomes something much larger, the Queen replied. The trials are public. All of Alain's society will watch. They will see not just how I perform, but how you respond to challenges. Your actions will teach them about humanity. That evening, Marcus discussed the situation with his crew in their quarters. Captain, this is crazy, said Lieutenant Kim. You're talking about marrying an alien queen. What will Earth say? Dr. Vasquez looked thoughtful. Actually, from an anthropological perspective, this could be the most important cultural exchange in human history. But what about Marcus as a person? Asked Rodriguez. This isn't just about politics. Marcus appreciated his crew's concern. I won't lie to you all. The Queen is remarkable. But you're right. This is bigger than personal feelings. If these trials can help prevent a war and build understanding between our species. Then I have to try. The announcement of the courtship. Trials sent shockwaves through the Alain Empire. Nothing like this had happened in over 1,000 years. The trials would be broadcast to every planet in Alain space. The first trial was called the Trial of Sacrifice. Marcus and Queen Zerthil were placed in a simulation, where they had to choose between saving the Queen's greatest political rival, or securing their own victory in the trials. The Queen's rival, Lady Myrdia, was trapped in a burning building. Saving her would mean failing the trial and ending any chance of union. Leaving her would guarantee success, but cost an innocent life. Marcus didn't hesitate. He ran into the burning simulation and carried Lady Myrdia to safety, even though she had publicly opposed the idea of human-Alain cooperation. "You fool," Lady Myrdia said when she realized what had happened. "You have lost everything to save someone who would never do the same for you." Marcus helped her stand up. "My lady, that's exactly why I had to save you." Queen Zerthil watched this with growing amazement. In Alain culture, political rivals were obstacles to be overcome, not people to be protected. The second trial was the trial of wisdom. An ancient puzzle was presented, a mathematical equation that had stumped Alain scholars for centuries. The Queen approached it with pure logic, calculating variables and running probability scenarios. Marcus looked at the puzzle differently. He saw that it wasn't really about mathematics at all. It was about understanding the emotions of the ancient Alain who had created it, someone who felt lonely and disconnected from others. "The answer isn't a number," Marcus told the assembled court. "It's a feeling." The puzzle was created by someone who wanted to be understood, not solved. When Marcus explained his reasoning, the ancient puzzle finally made sense. The mathematical equation was actually a poem about friendship written in number form. The Alain scholars were stunned. For 1,000 years, they had tried to solve it with logic. It took human emotional intelligence to understand its true meaning. As the trials continued, something unexpected began happening throughout the empire. Young Alain who watched the broadcast started questioning their society's rigid focus on efficiency over empathy. In the palace, High Counselor Jekrin approached the Queen with concerning news. "Your Majesty, we have reports of civil unrest on 12 planets. Young Alain are refusing their assigned duties. They say they want to live like humans and choose their own paths." Queen Zerthil looked out at the stars through her crystal window. "And how do you recommend we respond, Counselor?" "And the trials immediately. Exile the humans before they cause more disruption to our social order." The Queen was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, she could see another transport arriving with more news crews to cover the final trial. "No, Counselor," she said finally, "I think it's time our people learn that disruption is not always destruction. Sometimes it's growth." But neither the Queen nor Marcus realized that some Alain were planning to stop the trials permanently, and they were willing to use violence to do it. The third and final trial was scheduled for the next morning, but Captain Marcus Chen could not sleep. Reports were coming in from across the Alain Empire of young people refusing to follow orders, demanding to choose their own jobs, and asking questions that had never been asked before. Lieutenant Kim found Marcus standing on the balcony of their quarters, looking out at the crystal city below. "Captain, you should see this," she said, handing him a communication tablet. The screen showed news reports from different planets. On Veltara Prime, young Alain workers had stopped the production lines, saying they wanted to help injured colleagues instead of meeting efficiency quotas. On Meridian 7, students were refusing to take their assigned career paths, demanding to study what interested them instead. "They're calling it the human virus," Kim said quietly. "The traditionalist Alain think our behavior is spreading like a disease." Marcus watched the broadcast with mixed feelings. "We came here for peaceful diplomacy, not to start a revolution." "Maybe some revolutions need to happen," Dr. Vasquez said, joining them on the balcony. "Marcus, these people have been living like machines for thousands of years. You've shown them what it means to be alive." In another part of the palace, High Counselor Jekrin was meeting with a group of elder Alain nobles. Their crystal bodies glowed with angry red light. "The situation is becoming dangerous," said Lord Velcorn, one of the oldest members of Elaine's society. These humans have infected our youth with chaos and disorder. The mining rescue was impressive, admitted Counselor Dextril, but look at the cost. Production is down 40% across 17 sectors. Young Elaine are abandoning their duties to help each other. High Counselor Jekyll nodded grimly. The Queen is blinded by her fascination with Captain Chen. She does not see the damage being done to our civilization. Then we must act, Lord Velcorn declared. The human captain must be eliminated before he destroys everything we have built. Meanwhile, Queen Zerathiel was in her private study, reading reports about the growing unrest. But she was also reading something else. Ancient Elaine historical records that she had not looked at in decades. The files told a different story than the one taught in schools. Thousands of years ago, the Elaine had been different. They had families based on love, not genetic efficiency. They had art that expressed emotions, not just mathematical beauty. They had been more like humans, Your Majesty. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking concerned. Captain Chen, you should not be here. Tomorrow is the final trial, and tradition requires us to remain apart until then. Marcus stepped into the room. Your Majesty, I'm worried about what's happening in your empire. I never wanted to cause problems. The Queen turned to face him, her crystalline features catching the light from the ancient documents. Marcus, may I tell you something that no other human has ever heard? He nodded. Long ago, my people were not so different from yours. We felt love, anger, sadness, joy, all the emotions that make life meaningful. But we decided that emotions made us weak. Over many generations, we changed ourselves to be more logical, more efficient. What happened to the emotions? We buried them so deep that most Elaine forgot they ever existed. But your people have awakened something in us that we thought was gone forever. She paused, her glowing eyes showing something that looked almost like tears. I do not just wish to marry a man like you, Marcus. I wish to remember how to feel the way you do. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm started ringing throughout the palace. Emergency lights flashed, and the sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridors. Your Majesty, a guard burst into the room. There has been an attack on the ceremonial chamber. The third trial has been sabotaged. Marcus and the Queen rushed to the great hall where the final trial was supposed to take place. The beautiful crystal arena had been damaged by some kind of explosive device. Pieces of broken crystal covered the floor like sharp diamonds. High Counselor Jekyll was already there, examining the damage. Your Majesty, this attack was clearly designed to prevent the final trial. Someone does not want the ceremonies to be completed. Who would do such a thing? The Queen demanded. Someone who believes the humans are a threat to our way of life. Jekyll replied. But Marcus noticed something strange in the counselor's voice. Later that night, Marcus was returning to his quarters when he heard voices from a side corridor. He recognized High Counselor Jekyll's musical tone. The bomb was only the beginning. Jekyll was saying to someone, if the Queen continues with this madness, we will have no choice but to take stronger action. You mean eliminate the human? Captain asked another voice that Marcus did not recognize, if necessary. And if the Queen tries to protect him, she may have to be removed from power as well. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. He quietly moved closer to hear more. The traditionalist faction is ready, continued the unknown voice. We have support from the military and the outer planets. The Queen's fascination with human emotions has made her weak. Tomorrow, during the final trial, we will act, Jekyll declared. The humans will be blamed for attacking the Queen, and we will have justification to eliminate them all. Marcus had heard enough. He carefully moved away from the corridor and ran toward the Queen's chambers. He had to warn her, even though it would mean breaking diplomatic protocol. The Queen's guards tried to stop him, but Marcus insisted it was an emergency. When he was finally brought before Queen Zerathiel, she could see the urgency in his eyes. Your Majesty, there's going to be an assassination attempt tomorrow during the trial. High Counselor Jekyll is leading a group that wants to remove you from power. The Queen listened to his report with growing alarm. Marcus, if what you say is true, then neither of us will survive tomorrow. They will kill you and blame me for allowing human influence to weaken the Empire. Then we should cancel the trial and get my crew to safety. No, the Queen said firmly, if we run now, it proves their point that emotions make us weak. The young Alain who are fighting for change will lose hope. Marcus understood. So what do we do? The Queen's crystalline form began to glow brighter. We face them together, tomorrow. During the trial, I will show my people that strength comes, not from cold logic alone, but from the courage to care about others. Even if it costs us our lives, Queen Zerdil reached out and took Marcus's hand. For the first time, her crystal skin felt warm to his touch, especially then, she said. Is that not what humans would do? Marcus smiled, despite the fear in his heart. Yes, Your Majesty. That's exactly what humans would do. Outside the palace, High Counselor Jekrin and his conspirators finalized their plans. Tomorrow, the courtship trials would end in blood, and the Alain Empire would return to its old ways of efficiency and order. They had no idea that they were about to face something they had never encountered before, the combined power of human determination and rediscovered Alain emotions. The morning of the final trial arrived with unusual activity throughout the Crystal Palace. Captain Marcus Chen could see crowds gathering outside through his window. Alain citizens from across the Empire had come to witness the conclusion of the courtship trials, Captain. Lieutenant Kim said as she helped him prepare his ceremonial uniform. Our long-range scanners are picking up military ships moving toward the palace. More than usual for a ceremony. Marcus nodded grimly. Jekrin's conspirators are getting ready. Make sure the crew stays alert today in the rebuilt ceremonial chamber. Thousands of Alain nobles and citizens took their seats. The damaged crystal arena had been repaired overnight, but Marcus could still see the scorch marks where the bomb had exploded. Queen Zerdil entered wearing robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. She looked beautiful and regal, but Marcus could see the tension in her glowing eyes. Citizens of the Alain Empire. Her voice rang out across the chamber. Today we complete the ancient courtship trials. But these trials have become about more than the union of two individuals. They have become about the future of our civilization. High Counselor Jekrin stood up from his place of honor. Your Majesty, before we begin, I must express concerns shared by many loyal Alain. The human influence has caused dangerous instability across our empire. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus could see Alain nobles nodding in agreement, but he also noticed something new. Younger Alain in the audience, who looked angry at the counselor's words. Counselor Jekrin. The Queen replied calmly, your concerns are noted, but the trials will proceed as planned. The third trial was called the Trial of Truth. Both Marcus and the Queen had to answer a series of questions. While connected to an ancient Alain device that could detect lies, Captain Chen announced the trial judge. The first question is for you. Do you truly love Queen Zerdil, or are you only here for political advantage? Marcus looked directly at the Queen. I have come to care deeply for Her Majesty, not just as a queen, but as a remarkable individual. However, I must be honest. I am here because our peoples need each other, not because I sought romance. The truth device glowed green, confirming his honesty. The Queen smiled at his answer. Queen Zerdil, the judge continued. Do you truly wish to marry this human, or do you have another purpose? The Queen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. I must confess something to my people. When I said I wish I could marry a man like you, I was not speaking only of personal desire. I was speaking of survival. The truth device glowed green, but the crowd began to whisper in confusion. Our civilization is dying, the Queen continued, not from disease or war, but from the absence of growth. We have become so efficient, so logical, that we have forgotten how to adapt, how to evolve, how to truly live. High Counselor Jekrin suddenly stood up. Your Majesty, this confession proves that the trials are a deception. You seek to contaminate our pure society with human chaos. No, Counselor, the Queen replied firmly. I seek to save it. That was the signal. Armed Alain guards loyal to Jekrin began moving through the crowd. Marcus saw weapons being drawn and realized the assassination attempt was beginning. The queen has been corrupted, Jekrin shouted. For the good of the Empire, she must be removed. Marcus reacted instantly. He grabbed the queen and pulled her behind the ceremonial platform just as energy weapons began. Firing, the crowd screamed and scattered in panic. Your Majesty, we need to get you to safety, Marcus said as crystal fragments rained down around them. No, Marcus, the queen said, her eyes blazing with determination. If we run now, they win. Help me reach the center of the chamber. That's suicide. They'll kill us both. Trust me, she said, taking his hand. It's time to show them what we learned from humans, together. They ran toward the center of the chamber while energy bolts flew around them. Marcus used his military training to shield the queen from the worst of the attack. When they reached the center, Queen Zerthil did something that no Alain ruler had done in 1,000 years. She began to sing. It was not the mathematical music that Alain were known for. It was something deeper, more emotional, a song of love, loss, hope, and the courage to change. The effect was incredible. The younger Alain in the crowd began to glow brighter, their crystalline bodies responding to emotions they had never felt before. Some began to cry tears of pure light. Stop her! Jekrin screamed to the soldiers. She's awakening the old ways. But something unexpected happened. Many of the soldiers stopped firing. The queen's song was awakening emotions in them too. Memories of feelings their ancestors had once known. Marcus understood what the queen was doing. She was not just singing. She was healing her people's hearts. One by one, more Alain began to join the song. Workers who had been inspired by human behavior, young people who wanted to choose their own paths. Even some older Alain who remembered stories their grandparents had told about the emotional past. High Counselor Jekrin realized his plan was failing. In desperation, he grabbed an energy weapon himself and aimed it directly at Marcus. If I cannot stop the queen, I will remove the source of the infection, he shouted. The weapon fired, but instead of hitting Marcus, it struck Queen Zerthil. She had thrown herself in front of him at the last second. The queen collapsed in Marcus's arms, her crystalline form flickering between light and darkness. Your Majesty, Marcus cried, holding her close. With her dying breath, she whispered, now they will see what it means to love someone more than yourself. The chamber fell completely silent. Even Jekrin's remaining loyal soldiers lowered their weapons in shock. Then something miraculous happened. The young Alain who had been changed by human influence began to approach the center of the chamber. They knelt round their fond queen, and their combined emotional energy began to flow into her, slowly. Queen Zerthil's crystalline form began to glow again. The power of rediscovered emotions, learned from humans, but now truly Alain, brought her back from the edge of death. She opened her eyes and looked up at Marcus. Did we succeed? Marcus looked around the chamber. High Counselor Jekrin had been rested by his own soldiers, who had finally understood what they were fighting against. Young and old Alain were embracing each other, showing affection that had been forbidden for centuries. Yes, Your Majesty, Marcus said with a smile. I think we did. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the bridge of a new kind of ship, one built with both human creativity and Alain technology. The first joint colony ship was ready to launch, carrying both species to a new world where they would build something neither could achieve alone. Queen Zerthil joined him at the observation window. She was different now, still regal and beautiful, but with warmth that had not existed before. Marcus, she said, I have a confession. I never truly wanted to marry you. Marcus laughed. I know, Your Majesty. You wanted to marry what we represent, the possibility of change, growth, and hope. Exactly. She smiled. I wanted to marry the idea that logic and emotion could work together instead of fighting each other. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, heading toward a new world where humans and Alain would build a better future together. Marcus reflected on the Queen's original words. She had wished she could marry a man like him. In the end, she had done something even better. She had helped her entire civilization marry the best parts of humanity, while keeping the best parts of themselves, and that, Marcus thought, was the most human thing of all, helping others become the best versions of themselves.